We're talking to the lead singer, Matt Bellamy of Muse.
Some of these things are just too blatant to ignore. I mean, it's something that I kind of came across through the internet and discovering. Actually heard about you through listening to Coast with George Norrie. I heard you getting interviewed on there, and that's where I first came across you and your work. And then I went onto Google Video and watched some of your films like Terror Storm, and it really kind of opened my eyes to things which I kind of felt. I kind of had like an instinct in me that kind of told me something wasn't quite right with the world, something wasn't quite right with the news media and the way it presents information to us, and seeing some of your programs really has sort of shed some light onto what I kind of felt was going on, and I think it's really time for people to face up to these things.
That is my favorite protest sign of all time. And so that song was a song called Uprising by an English rock band, Muse, and was released in 2009 on their fifth studio album, The Resistance. It peaked at 39 on the US Billboard Hot 100 and peaked in the top 10 in 7 countries. It was certified gold in the United Kingdom and in 4 other countries, platinum in 2 countries, and double platinum in the United States, making it their best-selling album. Now, interestingly, it turns out this song was inspired by Alex Jones in Infowars and his speaking truth to power and warning us about the dangers of globalism. It's funny because I remember when this came out, and I don't really pay that much attention to music anymore, but I always just assumed, like, yeah, it's a catchy song, but I thought it was another leftist anthem about, some superficial cause or something. And you'll have to forgive me because I am a child of the 90s. I grew up in the 90s, and back in those days we had our radical political bands, and what were they called? The The one that was the two Jewish kids that were mad they couldn't celebrate Christmas and the gay prostitute, and they didn't, what was that? Oh, LARP Against the Machine. Yeah, LARP Against the Machine that LARPs for the machine, and still hasn't, has there been any official response on my question I posed like a year and a half ago? No response is a response, so we see now who controls who. Real rebellious, though. So why is this important? Why am I talking about a song that's over 10 years old? And it's this idea I've presented of the political garden, the roots that feed the plants, the political plants. The culture feeds the plants. Andrew Breitbart called it a river, but I think it's better to think of it as roots. Roots that then feed policy. And we even see this with some of the LARP Against the Machine lyrics. Silence, something about silence makes me sick. Silence can be violence, kind of like a slit wrist. And here we are like 25 years later, and we're seeing people wave signs. Silence is violence. Because these lyrics have been on auto repeat in subcultures for decade after decade until it bleeds into public consciousness. Now, I want to talk about this because what I'm seeing is kind of a current internet fad where people on the right are saying, Trump wasn't good enough, he didn't do enough, he is promoting the shot. That looks like a lot of purity spiraling and one-upsmanship. And it's like, well, he's kind of doing things that he has to do. You have to remember that politics is the art of the possible. If you want a truther president, you have to make that palatable to the broader American public. If you want a truther president, it has to be something safe. It has to be politically possible. I hear people saying things like, I just don't feel I can trust him anymore. And I find someone complaining that they can't trust their politicians. It sounds to me a lot like someone saying, I kind of feel like these women I'm paying to sleep with me don't actually love me. And I'm thinking, and you think you're analyzing politics? Just take for another example, look at Barack Obama and gay marriage. Keep in mind, he opposed gay marriage. He had to, right? And then if you look at the graphs of the approve versus disapprove of gay marriage, the year that it crossed 50% approve is the year his views evolved. And then, of course, you even saw Bill Clinton coming out in favor of it, and he's the one that signed the Defense of Marriage Act because the culture makes it possible, makes what these executives say possible. They can't go out there and offend broad swaths of the country because it's just too politically toxic. And keep in mind how much Donald Trump has been reined in from his days of I could go in the street and just shoot someone. Well, when you've got to overcome a deficit of 15 to 20 million false votes every time you run, and that's going to be anyone, but he's about the only one that's going to be able to muster that level of turnout to beat that sort of deficit or handicap. He's got to speak in blander generalities, and unfortunately, yes, it does involve putting out, spoken support for this medical process that is, the CDC is holding an emergency meeting to look at yet another condition that's arising from these shots. But do keep in mind the numbers, although we don't have the true numbers of baseline from the CDC, you have the number of deaths being about on par with the number of deaths from aspirin annually. And then if you're actually concerned about what's going into your body, you should be looking at alcohol above all, because alcohol is 20 times more deadly than anything we've seen so far from this shot. And remember, 4 drinks is binge drinking. Chances are a lot of these truthers that can't handle this politispeak, this convenient politicking, are drinking way more than they should, and it's a very, very dangerous poison. A poison they willingly and enthusiastically ingest, quite possibly on a daily basis. But let me give you maybe a more personal example for those of you that have jobs and you occasionally interact with, say, an executive at a major company, like I occasionally do. I'm nobody important, but I occasionally get to be in the presence of those with tremendous responsibility. And we had a vice president come out with a global business, and he comes out and he's talking to us. He's addressing us as everything is reopening and the generalities. He talks about the weather and the sports ball team and safe, just mushy middle ground stuff that you can say to a wide audience, right? And then he gets to the medical procedure, the shot, right? And you could tell, and me and a friend, we always watch for this and people to try and figure out their true leanings. It's just the way he said, and he says the word, the shot is coming out. And so we're getting back to work. And there was like a slight frown and a slight pause. And if you weren't looking for it, you would have missed it because it was a bland general statement of, we now have medicine to treat this medical situation, right? But you could tell this guy wasn't on board. But because he's an executive, he does not have the cultural support, the roots, making it possible for him to say his true feelings. Now, we have pride flags pasted all over the place in the business area, which has nothing to do with business. How you generate enough friction to enjoy yourself with a partner is really got nothing to do with business anywhere, and shouldn't. But that's the culture. That's what the broad Americana culture, that's where it's at right now. So if you want a truther culture, you want a truther president, all of us, you're going to have to make that safe for the executives to say. See, it's the culture that makes it safe and controls what people in higher up in business and politics can say and do, because they're not all powerful. Now, and to illustrate this power of culture, think about if Joe Biden came out tomorrow and said 2 + 2 = 5. His base would go crazy. They'd love it. They'd support it wholeheartedly. And then the media would come out with these fawning articles about how forward-thinking he was in reimagining mathematics. I mean, that's the power of culture. You can turn the world upside down with culture. Now, I think more and more businesses are realizing how toxic and divisive this progressive culture is. This is why you're getting this phenomenon called mission protocol, or getting back to the basics, saying that, the workplace is not a place for politics. It's a place where we come together to work on our mission. You do what you want on your own time. But that's where you get this toxic divisiveness. And it's really important what you see these parents doing across the nation, which is standing up to critical race theory. It is this grassroots thing. It is what's happening at the base level, the root level, which is going to make it possible for the politicians to push back at higher levels. And you can't just ignore a complete layer of politics, because yes, you can be more effective at the local level, but most people are informed by federal level politics that then trickles down. How many people are voting Democrat just because they like Obama's skin color and his smile? Probably a great deal of them. So it all fits together. You can't just ignore one part of it, but the part that you can influence and the part you can work with and promote is your culture. And that goes from your tradition, religious gatherings, barbecues with your friends, your family, your connections, your Facebook page, your whatever you're doing, music you're promoting and listening to. And what you watch, you get more of. What you don't watch, you get less of. So if you keep watching Hollywood, if you keep watching these woke music videos or whatever it is, Amazon shows, you're going to get more wokeness. If you turn your back on it and watch more traditional conservative things or things with actual morality and value, that's what you will get more of. That is the power that you do have. That is a realistic action that you can take on a day-to-day basis. I mean, you want to look at a win that the right has had recently. It's been in the gun rights. Gun culture overwhelmed the gun grabbers. And that's because they brought in millions of new gun owners. They've been pushing back on gun laws. And how about those 9-0 victories the Supreme Court's been handing out to conservatives, both on gun rights and on immigration, as they would call it? You see how when an institution is threatened, say the Biden administration's threatening packing the court, all of a sudden the Supreme Court unifies. No longer are they divided on ideological ground. They are fighting to protect their institution. It's actually the checks and balances in action, saying, you better not pack this court because we are unified. 9-0 decisions. And so this is why a constitutional republic is great. This is why a checks and balance of power actually does work. And it's that constitutional republic that guarantees the greatest amount of freedom for its citizens over any other system of government that is actually implementable. You look at something like they're coming for freedom. BlackRock and these other companies that are buying up single-family homes 20 to 50% over asking price so that nobody can afford them, and then renting it back to the middle class. Oh yeah? They're going to rent it back to the middle class because the World Economic Forum says you will own nothing and you will be happy. Just like what is it? Well, it's whiteness. Single family home, mother, father, children being raised with traditional values ensures the survival of a republic. An atomized society with no property rights where everything is given to them in a neo-feudal system with the lords and ladies. This is why LARP Against the Machine came out, and their anti-whiteness video they recently made lines up with Coca-Cola corporate training, because they're all fed by the same master, and they're all trying to centralize power in the hands of the few to make a neoliberal world order where they will be the entertainers and the jesters for the new elite, the new nobility, and we will be the serfs. It is the return to serfdom. And really, the only way to push back is grassroots culture. The Roman Emperor Pertinax was killed by his own soldiers when he tried to govern justly like Marcus Aurelius, because the army was used to living rapaciously by that time. If you want free and fair, open and honest elections, you have to become a free and fair, open and honest people, and a people that value honesty and moral courage. And if you want a truther president, you have to be part of a culture that tells the truth.